Hey guys, it's Gwen. If you love what you hear, there are a few ways you can help us during Season 2. First, don't forget to subscribe to the Fresh Fiction Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Podcasts, or any of your other favorite podcast apps. Rating, reviewing, and sharing the podcast with your friends helps us out more than you'll ever know. Sharing is caring, as they say. You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram as Real Vixen. The Fresh Fiction Podcast is brought to you by REVELL Books and Bethany House, publishers of An Hour Unspent by Roseanna M. White. This is the third in her Showers Over England series, and I'm so excited to learn more about Evelina Manning, who is a clockmaker's daughter who finds herself entangled with a former thief named Barclay Pearce, who helped rescue her from a mugging and now is working with her father to investigate different things that are happening around them. So, Roseanna, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I am so excited to talk with you. This book, I have to say, just off the bat, I know that we shouldn't be this way, but the cover is just so beautiful.
I totally agree, and I'm always taken in by covers, so yeah, I love seeing ones Bethany House comes up with. They're always fabulous.
Do you feel like it, because it has like this really neat sort of almost time travel-y look to it, which is really, really interesting, but then when you find out it's 1915 England, it totally makes sense. And it looks very like post-Victorian Georgian style.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we definitely wanted clocks on there, given the theme of her clockmaker father. So when they said from inside a clock, I was like, oh, love it, love it.
That is so cool. Well, so Roseanna, before we start getting into An Hour Unspent, I'd love to hear more about you and how you started writing.
Okay, well, I live in West Virginia in the mountains. Grew up here, and we moved here back after college. I have two kids who are 10 and almost 13, and we homeschool, so very busy around here all the time. Very busy. Yep. So it's great to just be there and be the one that's, going through all their different steps with them. And as I'm reading their history with them, it's just constant inspiration. So I have been, married for 17, going on 18 years.
Oh, congratulations.
And, thank you. And, so I've been a writer pretty much since my teachers put a pencil in my hand and taught me how to write. I'm one of those that have always had stories running through my head. I remember my first short story that was not a school assignment when I was homesick one day, staying with my grandmother. She had no TVs. There was nothing for a sick child to do. She handed me paper and a pencil and said, oh, write a story or something. So I did, and, it was brilliant about princesses with a magic hair bow, as you would expect from a 6 or 7-year-old. And so from there, I was just hooked and wrote my first book at 12, finished it at 13, and hilariously, that became eventually, after several rewrites, The Lost Heiress, which was my first book with Bethany House. And, it's how I process my thoughts and feelings in the world, is to put it all into fiction. So it's part of who I am.
That is so fascinating. You've taken me on so many different directions that I want to go on now. But I'm very... So first of all, do you still have a copy of the first story that you wrote when you were 6?
I do. I have a copy of many of my early stuff that my mom kept in her basement for me for a long time. She just handed it all back several years ago and said, take this stuff out of my basement.
Did you stay up all night rereading any of it?
I didn't have to stay up all night because it was, they're 2-page stories. It didn't take terribly long, but yeah, it was pretty hilarious to go back through and read those early things.
That is so funny, and it's so interesting too that you found you found this really good bones in that story that you wrote when you were 12 that then turned into another book. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was one of those things where the story and characters had just stayed with me all those years. And one of those things that, you're watching movies and you're seeing actors and going, oh, they could totally play Justin, and that sort of thing, just all along. I knew I wanted to keep it alive, and I had rewritten it several times, like countless, lost track of how many times I'd rewritten it. But I also still have the handwritten manuscript of that, because I wrote it by hand in school when I should have been, doing homework and stuff. So I still have that and the covers that I drew myself when I was 12. So very cute.
That is so cute. I just love the idea that that those characters just couldn't leave you alone ever.
Yep.
So for you, because you said that you homeschool your kiddos and the history classes that you teach them inspire your own interest in history. What other stories have you kind of popped up because of the research that you've been doing with your kids?
Well, part of it was actually in this one, an hour unspent. It was in the history I was reading them about World War I that I read about the synchronization gears that allowed pilots to shoot through their propellers. That before had not been possible. They just had deflectors on their propellers to make the bullets ricochet off. So that was really kind of what inspired that question of, so this is like, a development. I never really paused to think of, the technology required for this. So that's when I decided, I'm going to totally put that in this series I'm writing and see where we go.
That's cool.
The time period and the interest. And when I had mentioned to my mechanically minded husband about the synchronization gear, he just said this off-the-wall comment of, well, it's all just clockworks. And I went, oh, clockmaking. And so, it's just kind of one of those moments where it just kind of clicks in your head. And I went, that would be so much fun. I'd never written about the clockmaking world before, so I thought it would be something interesting. You don't see it terribly often, but I knew it would be cool. You've
got your heroines doing things, which I always find very fascinating. When people and characters in themselves just have an interest outside of falling in love or a mystery or something, but they have their own hobbies and talents and won't let anybody get between them and that talent.
Well, I figure we all have our interests, and even when it is primary job to, keep a house and to stay home to raise your kids, there's still always something that has captured us, something that we're passionate about. And, for me, it's writing, obviously. But so I really just love to explore how it is for womankind in general, I guess, through the ages, to balance that desire to have family and to, keep your family and to be a great mother and a great wife with pursuing our other passions, and how, it requires balance, yes, but it also just requires that love for the things that you're doing. And in my head, heroines ought to be strong, and they ought to be there with the hero, but not need the hero. So I've been married for most of my life at this point, and we married pretty young. So I am so well aware of how my husband compliments me and make me stronger, and he's been a huge encourager, but never once has he ever said, "Oh, stop pursuing your interests." He's been my biggest champion, and I think that's part of what gives us a great marriage is championing each other, but that's also what helps us be successful in the other parts of our lives, is that when people really love you, they encourage you in the things you love beyond them.
I feel like that also trickles so well into your characters too, that's something that's at the heart of what they're looking for and also expect in their partners.
Well, when I first got the idea for the series, the heroine in book one, Rosemary, was where the story started in my head. But I knew I wanted her to be part of a family of thieves, and I wanted them to be a kind of noble sort of thief. So I decided that the root of everything they do is their love for their family. And their family is a total choice family. They adopted each other, I say. It's just a band of orphans who decided to stick together. So when I assigned an older brother to the family in book one and got to know him a little bit as I wrote that, I realized he was going to be such a fun hero to write eventually. So I decided I'd put him in book three and make him kind of the culmination of it. And that would really be a way to get to the heart of who this family was, how they started, and, really what keeps them together. In the first two books, we get a glimpse of him as, the sisters refer to him as a tyrant sometimes. So he obviously has this need to control and to be the one guiding. But they also adore him. So obviously it's out of love, everything he does. So I just loved exploring this idea of what would make a kid, a young man, a boy, as he grew up, what would make him seek family above all. What would make him teach them something like thieving and yet instill in them these ideas that you never hurt the ones you love, you never take advantage of people who are worse off than you, and you pursue everything you do in order to help other people. So it was this interesting, just kind of dichotomy that I wanted to have in him, and I just had so much fun pulling it out and digging into his past and finally bringing it to light.
Yeah, it's kind of like having your own Robin Hood in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you been hearing back from readers about how much they're enjoying this, especially since it's the last of the series?
Yeah, a lot of them have been my street team, my launch team, that, I knew they were going to be reading it. I know they've read the first two, but they've been very eager, and it's always great to hear how much they love this installment, how sad they are to see the series end. That's always fun. And it's always interesting to see where readers who have read the whole series along with me, where they come down on what their favorite book is. Mm-hmm. So a lot of them are saying how they've been waiting for Barclay's story, so it was so great, and, they love him so much. So that's always really nice to hear. Yeah,
it's really great to hear that, especially a character that means so much to you also means so much to the readers.
Exactly.
Well, so when you're not, I'm sure you're preparing yourself now for a new book, because this one just came out, so you probably have another one coming out next year. And I'm interested for you, when you're not writing and you have time to kind of wind down, are you watching or reading or listening to anything that you want to recommend?
Well, I have, as most of us I'm sure do, I have a to-read list that is a mile high. So the way that I can mostly narrow it down is based on what my church's book club reads. So they always have me pick our books. I don't know why. Once in a while they'll have a suggestion, but mostly they tell me to pick. So every time I see a book I really want to read, I put it on our book club list so that I guarantee I will read it. So right now we just finished up my book this past month, but next month we've been reading The Tox Files by Ronnie Kendig, so we're ready for her newest one, and that is, I'm drawing a blank now on what it's called, of course, but the third book in her series that we're really looking forward to. And then the month after that, we're reading Hidden Among the Stars by Melanie Dobson. So very much looking forward to those in my fiction reading. In nonfiction, I just finished reading both of Bob Goff's books, Love Does and Everybody Always, and they were amazing. I'm not a huge nonfiction reader, but those kept my attention. They were hilarious and such powerful books. So I recommend those highly to everyone. And let's see, I have actually been pretty recent to the audiobook world. I had never listened to much. Being, home all the time with my kids, it's hard to listen to a lot of different things, but I decided it would be great incentive to make me exercise if I was listening to something fun.
Right.
So I've done some great audiobooks over the summer. I did listen to the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society, which was so much fun, and the Scarlet Cord by, I keep drawing blanks on names now. And anyway, it's biblical fiction. It's been around for a while. Tessa Afshar, that's who it was by. And some nonfiction has worked its way in there. I just finished up Big Magic and a very academic book called The Closing of the American Mind. So those have kept me quite busy this summer. So right now I've been in a little young adult kick and read Cinder, or listened to Cinder, and listening to something called The Fifth Wave right now. So that's most of what I've been doing in my spare time. When it comes to television, I very rarely have control of the remote, and when someone hands it to me, I turn it off. So I haven't been doing a ton of watching outside of just some, like reality shows, like Forged in Fire. I love watching them make the knives.
Make the swords, yeah.
Yeah, the artistry of it's really interesting to me. And we also love Destination Unknown with Josh Gates. It's a travel show where he goes and explores archaeological sites and stuff. So the history lover in me adores that. And that's pretty much all I've been watching lately.
Well, Roseanna, our time is almost up, but I wanted to make sure that you had a chance to tell our listeners how they can stay in touch with you and find out more about you.
You can always find me online. My website is roseannamwhite.com. I do have a shop on my website where you can buy signed copies of my books from me if you like. My email address is on there. You can always get in touch with me there. I'm a little bit addicted to email, so if you email me, I will probably email you back with within an hour. And I do have a blog where I blog 2 to 3 times a week at roseannamwhite.blogspot.com. And yeah, you can sign up for my newsletter on my website, and that'll get you all the latest news and some special for subscriber-only perks and deals. So those are always the first people to see cover reveals and that sort of thing. So I do encourage everyone to sign up for that. And you can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all those social media sites. And it's always just at Roseanna M. White.
Well, Roseanna, thank you so much. This is so great. And you guys can find An Hour Unspent anywhere books are sold, online and in person. Thank you again so much. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
I'd like to extend my thanks again to Roseanna M. White for joining me today. You can find An Hour Unspent anywhere books are sold. Thank you to REVELL Books and Bethany House for their continued support of the podcast. Make sure you stop by freshfiction.com to find out more about Roseanna M. White and other REVELL and Bethany House authors. And until next time, happy reading.